Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. This is part 2 of a series on how to make a junk journal, and this is just a very brief flip through where I show the finished and bound junk journal. Now these pages are larger than your typical junk journal, so I'm going to show you various examples on how to put them together and how to have pages with pockets, tucks, and also pages that flip out. So to make the process easier of putting the pages and the signature together, I took a circular page and I cut it down to size. Now this circular page is actually folded in half. And what I'm doing here is that I am laying it at the corner of a scrapbook paper, and I'm just going to cut it so that it's the same height as the template. And I'm going to do this with various pages. And as you see, instead of using a paper trimmer, I'm just using a utility cutter and a metal ruler. I find this to be the easiest way to cut several sheets of paper. And here I had some that I had already pre-cut. Now, even though these have been cut to the right height, they're not a long enough width. Whereas if I folded these in half, they would be too short width-wise to actually fit properly in the journal. So as you're going to see, my template is larger than the scrapbook paper. And I'm going to find several ways around this, and I'm going to get creative with these papers. So all the different scraps that I have, I'm going to implement them one way or another. So the easiest way to basically come up with the length that, or the width, I should say, that I need is to just overlap the papers, and then I'll have a page that is large enough to basically fit in my junk journal properly. And with this particular page that I glued together, whatever surpasses the template, I'm just going to fold into a little tuck spot, and later on I will continue to embellish on this. So this is the first idea. And as you see, it fits perfectly in the template. I simply creased it, and now I am ready to move on to the second idea. So in the second idea, this scrap paper was not as wide as the other. So here, all I did was simply just overlap, glue, and it made the piece of paper large enough to fit properly in the journal. And of course, once I finish making these sheets the proper size, I will then go back, and wherever there are seams, I will either add some type of embellishment or a pocket, or maybe some stitching. So as the tutorial continues, I'll basically continue working to make it look as if I meant for the journal to look this way. In reality, I basically just didn't really plan things, and my cover was too large, so I ended up having to improvise afterwards. Okay, so this is one of my favorite ideas. It is so simple. And from this idea, you're going to end up with 2 pockets once you fold this page in half. So what I'm doing is that I placed the 2 sheets with the blank side facing each other, and I marked where I needed them to overlap. And I'm only gluing up to the place that I marked with my pencil. And so those edges on the top and on the bottom are going to be glued together, creating a hollow center that we can use as pockets. So once I fold this in half, I'm going to have a pocket on one side and a pocket on the other side. Super easy, and I love the sturdiness because you have 2 sheets of scrapbook paper back to back, and it's a great idea for those scrapbook papers that are not double-sided. So in the next idea, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a pocket, but I'm also going to create a flip. I'm not sure what it's called, a flip out, I guess. I'm not sure. So basically, I'm marking the overlap of where I'm going to put my glue. And again, I'm gluing from where I marked to the edge. And since this is going to create a pocket, I also need to put glue on the outside edge so that the pocket actually holds whatever's going to go in there, because it doesn't go all the way to the middle. And now I'm just lining it up with the template, and here I'm going to fold. And so once I folded this paper, I realized that it was a bit long and it was going to surpass the middle crease. So I ended up folding it once more just so that it would fit. So it has a pocket, it has a fold out, and then I'm going to make another fold, which is going to be a tuck spot. And now you see once it's folded in half, it fits perfectly to the template. And we have the pocket, the part that folds out, and the tuck spot. And here I moved on from scrapbook papers to utilizing pages from a used gardening book. For this part of the creation process, all I really did was just overlap the 2 pages, and then I used my template to basically tear the page down to size. And I don't really mind that part of the other page is visible once it's folded, because later on I will probably do some collaging, or I'll add some type of decorative element that is going to make it all work together. So here I'm pretty much just laying the template on top of the book page. And for these particular pages, I just decided that the best look was simply to use the ruler and tear the excess. And I actually like the mixture of straight cut pages with pages that were torn. I think it gives the book varying textures, and it's a very interesting feel when you're thumbing through the pages. And here I'm once again switching back to some scrapbook paper, but you could definitely also use book pages or any type of paper to make these types of pages. So I placed 2 pieces of scrapbook paper on top of my template, and I left a little gap, which is about, I would say, 1/2 inch. And I put some glue on the very top, and I laid a scrap piece of paper over that. So this scrap piece of paper is basically joining these two other larger pages. And I'm only gluing the top for now. I will then glue the bottom. So I flipped it over, and then on the other side, I got another piece of leftover scrapbook paper. And again, I'm only going to glue the top edges so that these two scrap pieces of paper are now holding and supporting the larger scrapbook paper. And I simply just folded it in half, and I'm just going to cut the excess down to size using my template. And these are going to make pockets or tucks, I guess you could say, on both sides of the pages. So this is why I didn't really glue the bottom yet, because since I had to cut it down to size and I wasn't sure exactly where it was going to be, I decided it would be better to cut first and then glue. And so once it's been cut to size, all it needs is just a little bit of glue at the very bottom. And as you see, the two separate pages have now been joined together, both on the front and on the back. And we've also created some pockets that we can use for adding different elements and embellishing. And I also feel that the double layers of scrapbook paper also make for a sturdier page once it's bound. So after preparing the pages, I put them in signature, and now I'm just leafing through to see what other elements I could add. Specifically, I want to find all the areas where there were pages that were joined, and I want to cover those areas with either another pocket, a tuck spot, something to add a little more interest and to break up any part that might be a little unsightly, or any place where pages were joined together. So on this first example, I'm simply adding another piece that I cut off earlier when I was cutting pages down to size, and I am just creating a little pocket to put on the edge of the page. And there are some pages that I will leave completely blank, because that also gives the opportunity for a journaling spot, some collaging, some painting, something different. Not every page needs to have a pocket per se. I'm trying to be selective with where I place these additional elements. Here I just realized that the overlap was too thin and the page had started lifting, so I just also took a moment to strengthen that as well. And on this particular page, I actually really enjoyed making these pockets. So I decided that I was going to use not just one, but an additional scrap, and I was going to make 3 pockets. So the one that was originally part of the page, and then I was going to add 2 more pockets, and each one was going to be a little wider. So I ended up gluing down these excess pieces of scrapbook paper, and I really liked the end result. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to decorate with the different pockets and the different patterns. And it was basically just a spare of the moment decision, but I really liked how it turned out. Now I'm just leafing through all of the different signatures one last time before I bind them. And at this step, I'm just trying to make sure that all the pages are right side up. I'd want to make sure that if there's print on any page, that it's not going to be upside down. And I'm just going over everything one last time to make sure that they are in the order that I want to show up once it's bound. So I'm just giving it a quick flip through and making sure that all is in order. And I'm also making sure that I'm organizing the signatures in the order that I want them to be bound. And in my next step, where I'm getting ready to bind, I'm going to make another template. And this template is going to help me get the book bound in a way that is consistent and even. So I'm using the same torn out page from the circular that I was using as my earlier template, and I just cut it to the height that I needed. And now I'm just going to trace around it, and that's going to help me get the proper width for my template. And I'm going to go and cut this out as well. And at this phase, basically what I'm going to do is that I'm going to fold this template so that I can determine where I'm going to sew the different signatures. So I marked the middle lengthwise, and since I have 4 signatures, I need to have 4 vertical lines that are evenly spaced apart. So after I marked the middle going down vertically, I took the edges and I folded them to the middle mark. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fold each side in half once more so that I can have different vertical creases going down lengthwise. Afterwards, I'm going to fold it in half lengthwise, and each half is going to be folded in half. And this is also going to help me figure out where my binding should be. And here I decided to make just one more fold because I thought that I should bind the book a little closer to the edges. So I went ahead and just made another fold there. And once I open up this template, I'm going to have all of these different creases that are going to help me to determine an even spacing. And I'm going to mark with a marker where I want my stitching to be. So as you see, I have 4 dots going horizontally that are evenly spaced, and vertically there are 3 dots. And it's going to give me a guide so that my stitching can be even. Now, some people don't follow this step. I've done it with another journal, but then my stitching did not come out evenly, and I personally like even stitching. So I am now using some binder clips to hold my template in place. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to mark where I have all those dots. So I'm using a Sharpie marker and I'm actually piercing through the template and I'm making a little dot on the inside cover. Now, once this book is bound, it's not going to be very visible. But it's definitely going to help me to stitch the signatures properly. And here I am preparing a signature to be bound in my book, and I'm using binder clips to hold all the pages in place and make sure that nothing shifts on me while I'm preparing it for binding. And I'm using the same exact template. All I did was that I folded it in the middle and I marked where I need the stitches to go through. Afterwards, I took a pin and I poked holes in those same spots to allow the needle to go through easier once I'm binding the journal. And here I have already marked all the different signatures. I've used the binder clips to hold the pages together. And we are ready to move on to the next phase and actually bind. So here I have some cotton thread, some beeswax, and a tapestry needle. And this is what I'm going to use to actually bind the signatures into the journal. And if you're having trouble threading the needle, just adding a little bit more beeswax to the very tip is going to allow you to thread the needle a lot easier. So I'm going to start binding from the end of my book towards the front. So the very last signature will actually be the first signature that will be bound in the journal. And I'm going to start in the very middle. So I found where I marked and where I made the little puncture. And I'm going to take the thread of the end of my thread, the tail of my thread, and I'm going to hold it in place with one of the binder clips so that it stays in place and gives me some tension while I'm actually binding. So at the very beginning, I'm not going to bind this book very tight because it's going to help me to find where I'm going to make the stitch. So I'm using the actual mark that I made on the journal. and we're going to go from inside to outside. And then we are going to go from the outside in. And what I'm going to do to make it easier to find where I need to stitch is that I'm going to take my needle, poke it through where I marked, and I'm just going to wiggle that needle around so that it actually gives me like a location of where that marking is on the inside of the spine. So there it moved the threads around the fabric a little bit, and I know exactly where I need to go ahead and pierce the needle so that it comes out where it should. And we're going to go back through the signature. And again, I'm not making any stitches that are too tight at this point because we can always go back and tighten after. Right now it's more about stitching where the marks have been made to ensure that the stitches are going to be even. And do be careful in the stitching part because I have pierced my fingers in this process. So be very careful with this stitching process. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to the very last mark at the bottom. And this time we're going from the inside and we're going out. And there we're piercing through the spine. And to finish off our 3-hole pamphlet stitch, we are going to go back from the outside in the middle. So here I am pulling on the string a little bit and I am making the thread a little more taut because now we're actually going to go back through a hole where we've already stitched through. So I want it to be taut so that we don't split the thread. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch from the outside in. This is possibly one of the hardest steps in the 3-hole pamphlet stitch, at least in my opinion, because you don't want to split the thread, and you also want to be careful that you don't accidentally poke another hole through your signature. So at the same time that I'm trying to keep things kind of taut, I'm also trying to make a little bit of space so that I can find where the other thread went through. And here, as you see, I was able to successfully make it through. So now I removed my needle and I'm taking the other tail and I'm going to go ahead and make a knot. Now, very important, when you're making this knot, take one of the threads and slide it under the thread that is running from the top to the bottom of the binding. And once you make the knot, it's going to hold everything securely in place. And I'm just making sure that everything is nice and tight. Now do also be careful at this step because you do want it to be taut, but you don't want to pull it so tightly that you tear your pages. So you kind of need to find the proper balance. And here, aside from just making the knot, I decided that I was going to go ahead and make a little bow as well. So I just decided to add a little extra touch to this signature. And once you're done either making the knot or the bow, you just want to cut the excess string. And here is another quick flip through of the completed journal thus far. My next video will be about the decoration process, which I think is going to be the most fun part of this journaling process. So I definitely can't wait to make different elements and ephemera and all sorts of tags and journaling cards to fill this journal up. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Please feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching to the end. And please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much, and God bless.